All right, we are at the 12:01 mark. So I believe we'll get started and kick things off. Again, thank you everybody for being here today. I'm Michael. I am the district director for Congresswoman Claudia Tenney, New York's 24th Congressional District. I am joined here today with the U.S. Department of Commerce. They are a great resource for everybody within our 12 counties. We are very happy to have them on board today. A few housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded and will be on the Congresswoman's official website at tenney.house.gov. After the webinar concludes, it may take a couple days to get it uploaded. So just bear with us if you have any questions or follow-ups or wanted to review the information from today. So just to kick things off, this is our monthly webinar series with the U.S. Department of Commerce to go over global trade resources. I am joined by Kate, Rosanna, and John, each from different regions of New York State. They are all working in sync because of the 12 counties that the Congresswoman represents. We have 3 different regions, all the way up from Watertown, New York, all the way over to the Western New York region over in Niagara County. So thank you everybody for being here today. I will kick it right off to Kate. And just as another further housekeeping tip, if you do have any questions, feel free to utilize the Q&A function at the bottom of your screens. I apologize if you're using a mobile device. I'm not exactly sure where that button may be, but it should be at the very bottom of your screen for the Q&A. So we will get to Q&A for any questions after the presentation. So that being said, I will hand it off to you, Kate. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Michael. And thank you, Representative Tenney's office, for allowing us to participate. My name is Kate Daly. I'm the director of the Rochester Export Assistance Center, also known as the U.S. Commercial Service. I'm joined by Rosanna Masucci, who is in Buffalo and leads the upstate New York team. And also with us today is John Tracy, who covers the Syracuse territory. And today, really wanting to give a high-level overview of U.S. commercial service and share information of a federal resource that's available to you locally. And the main takeaway is if you're interested in exporting or you're already exporting and you want to increase exports, please lean on us to be helpful in any way that we can. So with that, I'll jump in. Okay, so the U.S. Commercial Service, we are part of the International Trade Administration, which is housed in the U.S. Department of Commerce, which is a federal agency with headquarters in Washington, D.C. We have offices across the United States and housed within our embassies and consulates overseas. Our main mission is to help U.S. companies to increase their exports, to sell more internationally, and therefore bringing back jobs, increasing jobs and investment to the United States. We have a presence domestically. We have a U.S. field team. That's what Rosanna, John, and I are a part of. We're in 106 locations across the United States. So if you are not within the upstate New York territory, you know somebody that's interested in connecting elsewhere in the United States, we can definitely connect them. Something particularly special about the U.S. Commercial Service is our network overseas. So as you can see, we're in 80 countries. The U.S. Commercial Service teams are typically housed in the embassy or consulate, and usually a few people in each of those offices to help with specific industries and different markets, helping U.S. exporters with any needs that they might have. And this slide gives you a sense in New York State. So the Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse team, there's others. We have a downstate team, a team that covers Harlem and New York City and Albany area. We then feed into the Northeast network, which then filters into that whole U.S. field team that I mentioned. If you're I highlight some of what county you're in of who you should be working with. So if you're in Allegheny, Cattaraugus, Chautauqua, Erie, Genesee, Niagara, Orleans, or Wyoming County, you would be working with Rosanna. I'm in the Rochester office and I cover Chemung, Livingston, Monroe, Ontario, Schuyler, Seneca, Steuben, Wayne, and Yates County. And John in Syracuse covers Broome, Cayuga, Shenango, Cortland, Jefferson, Oneida, Onondaga, Oswego, Lewis, Madison, Tioga, and Tompkins counties. And I did have to do some pronunciation checks before I did that slide. So a question of why should you be considering exporting if you're a US company? Um, One reason, only 4% of the world's population is in the United States. So there's a huge market to tap into. 96% of the world population outside of the United States. It's also 70% of the world's purchasing power is outside of the US. And we found that companies that export tend to grow faster and approximately 8.5% less likely to go out of business. So it's a nice way to diversify where you're selling in the markets and where you're doing your work. I also wanted to highlight, just to give you a sense of the United States, how much we are exporting compared to other countries. So of our gross domestic product, 11% comes from exports, and that's significantly lower than some of our other counterparts. Germany's at 47%, Canada at 31%. So just shows that there's a lot of potential and a lot of room for US companies to grow in their exports and tap into other opportunities outside of the United States. I'm going to switch gears here and just share a little bit about who the U.S. Commercial Service typically works with and the services that we provide. You typically we'll work with anybody that's interested in exporting. And we have other partners within the state and other agencies that also can help on the exporting side. But a sweet spot for us tends to be if you're a manufacturer and you meet a 51% US content rule. And what that means is 51% of what you're producing has to be made in the United States. So you couldn't import product from China and then resell it and consider that an export that's eligible for our services. Our profile also tends to be companies that are already selling internationally. They're small, medium-sized companies that already have a robust domestic client base in the US, and therefore they already have their commercialized product or service. Again, we want to be helpful and help any company that's interested in exporting, and we rely on Global New York, which is the state's export arm, and also the Small Business Development Center if you're a new business and interested in exporting, so we can help you get you to the right partners. At a high level, and I'm going to get into these services a little bit later on, but the core areas where the U.S. Commercial Service is helping U.S. exporters, we're providing export counseling, which often includes market intelligence. We're helping companies with matchmaking overseas in markets that are of interest. We're putting on different events and have different marketing initiatives that are supporting companies with their exports. And we have a commercial diplomacy effort based out of DC, helping advocate for US companies. So that first bucket that I mentioned, the export counseling, what that looks like, John, Rosanna, and I regularly are meeting one-on-one with companies that they're already selling in the United States. They might be exporting already. And we'll have a conversation about their product and where they're selling and where else it might make sense to sell. So really kind of hands-on figuring out a strategy to increase the markets that they're selling to. A lot of times, in addition to talking to the local office domestically, we'll connect them to our international offices overseas based on what markets they're interested in, and they can get additional counseling based on the market and the industry that they're in. We also provide counseling specifically for marketing. So we have an e-commerce innovation lab. If you're a company, you're interested in having an audit done of your website to make sure that you're able and ready to sell internationally, the innovation lab can take a look at your website, make sure the languages are translating right, and kind of give feedback on, does it make sense given what markets you're targeting. So any of these services, you can work through the local team in Syracuse, Buffalo, Rochester, and we can kind of get you started on where to go next. As part of the counseling, our market intelligence. So we have teams throughout the country that are putting together country commercial guides specific to markets. It's providing information on market conditions and opportunities, regulations, business customs. And then again, on top of that, if you want real specific research, we rely heavily on our partners overseas to have that conversation about your specific product or service, and does that market make sense for you? Once you've honed in and you have a sense of where you want to export, through our local office and in partnership with our overseas offices, we can help match make you with whatever you need, whatever partner you need to be successful in that market. So it could be finding a local distributor, could be finding an agent, it could be that end user. And we work to find vetted companies that express an interest in working with you. And there's different ways that we can connect you to those partners. Some companies in the U.S. like to go over, and the partner office at the embassy can set up a day of meetings, and we'll take you from meeting to meeting. They can also have virtual meetings with those potential partners, and they can also just hand off a list of vetted partners that you can follow up on with your own calling, knowing that they've been approached and have expressed an interest in working with you. Our single company promotion, that's another way that we work with companies. I guess an example of this, I'm working with a college in the Finger Lakes area that right now, they're going to be doing a webinar in Korea to talk about their college and their programs. And the audience is going to be educational agents that might be interested in sending students to the college in the Finger Lakes. So we can do some events and specific promotional opportunities based on what you need. I mentioned our marketing and trade events. Our team domestically and overseas, we try to be very strategic in attending different trade shows and trade fairs and hosting trade missions. Rosanna, John, and I are regularly trying to make sure that the upstate New York community is included. If you ever have a question about a trade show that you might want to attend and how we can help, that's definitely a conversation that we can have. We just ended Export Week, which Rosanna and a team, I think going on third or fourth year, in which there was about 70 webinars and trainings and tradecraft that mostly were of no cost to companies. So it was a great opportunity if you were new to exporting or been in the industry a long time, just to kind of get some refreshers. And the last bucket where we assist U.S. companies with exporting has to do with commercial diplomacy. So we have an advocacy center in Washington, D.C. If you are a U.S. company that's interested in responding to an RFP or tender from a foreign government, the Advocacy Center through the Department of Commerce can advocate on your behalf. We are interested in making sure that U.S. companies are winning business overseas. So that's something that you can definitely take advantage of. Also, if you need to report a trade barrier or need to let us know of a trade dispute where we could be helpful, that's something also where we try to be helpful. An example of a recent trade barrier I heard of in Canada, there is a new law that there's going to be additional labeling requirements that have to be in French and English. So was a company that was concerned about the cost to update their labels and kind of time and cost of business. So they reported that to the Department of Commerce, and that might be something that we can help on. A trade dispute, if you have something stuck in customs, if you want to alert us to that, that's something we can also try to help expedite and move along. So in fiscal year 2023, the U.S. Commercial Service, domestic and abroad, served 92,000 clients. 85% of those were small, medium-sized businesses. And that work resulted in $170 billion in facilitated export revenue and inward investment. So exporting is definitely significant part of our economy, but as you saw from the beginning of the presentation, definitely room to grow, and that's an area where we want to be helpful. That is all I have. I want to thank the representative's office again. If there's any questions, happy to take them. And I've included my information as well as Rosanna and John's. If you have any questions of who you should be working with, I'm happy to direct you to the right person.
Thank you very much, Kate. If you don't mind just leaving that the contacts up there for the remainder, just so that anybody seeing this or looking at the recording is able to get that down as well. So thank you, everybody. Currently, we will head right into the Q&A. If anybody does have any questions, feel free to pop in there. I do not have anything queued up in there currently, but I'll just give it an extra minute or so. Um, Kate, I did just want to ask one question, and it's kind of escaping me, so I'm using a term a little loosely, but for different regions, are there any restrictions on companies that have multiple locations within the United States? So a manufacturer that's US based with multiple locations in, say, Buffalo region, but also out in Ohio. Who would then be the best point of contact? Do you base it based off headquarters or?
So I think going through the headquarters is where usually they'd end up, but I think it's case by case. If you're manufacturing something in another state, you definitely want to rely on that team in that other state as well. And I know, Rosanna, do you want to add any flavor to that?
Yeah, there's actually a lot of instances of that particular situation happening. And in most cases, we would defer to the company of whoever, wherever the person who is handling international sales is located. So we have some clients that are, manufacturing here in upstate New York, but their representatives are located somewhere else, specifically the people that cover international trade. So if they're located in, Florida or in Texas, we leave it up to the company to decide if that person's more comfortable working with someone local to where they're located. That's perfectly fine. If they would prefer to work with one of us, because that's where the manufacturing is taking place, then that's fine as well. So it doesn't really matter or make a difference.
Okay, understood. And then just one final follow-up question on my end was, you had touched briefly on helping with a lot of the different trade restrictions, some of the policies of other countries, etc. Um, is that in the form of a legal service that you all have in like a division, or is it something that you refer over to a legal entity? I just wanted to kind of clarify how that process would work to kind of help a business navigate any trade restrictions.
So within our commercial guides, there is country specific guidance, but then also having a conversation with our overseas office, they tend to be able to shed light on what restrictions companies should be aware of, and different rules, regulations that are important for their industry.
And if a
Okay.
company's having a dispute in a particular country with a customer for non-payment or something like that, we can usually provide assistance with a list of qualified um, legal law firms that they can work with in that country through our business service providers program that we have. And that's just either a quick call to our embassy to find out what their list is or wherever we could find their list, or sometimes it's located on the trade.gov website.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That answers the questions on my end. I don't see anything within the Q&A, so I think it's safe to set it there. Again, thank you everybody for attending this webinar. Thank you very much, Kate, Rosanna, and John for providing this info to all of our businesses within the district. So hopefully if you haven't already contacted any of these offices, please feel free to if you are interested in learning more or getting some help in essentially growing your business and getting more business out there and selling your products. feel free to reach out to these contacts or feel free to reach out to any of our offices here. We have offices in Lockport, Victor, New York, and Oswego, New York, with a satellite office in Watertown. Feel free to reach out to the Congresswoman's office anytime. Again, this will be recorded and sent over to the Congresswoman's official website at tenny.house.gov. And so I will leave it there. Thank you again, Kate, Rosanna, John, very much so.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Michael.
And this will conclude. Thank you, everybody.